Yes, hello everyone, and welcome to the panel New Creative Opportunities for Artists in Performing Arts. My name is Christian Rakow. I'm a theater critic and editor of Germany's online theater journal Nachtkritik.de, and I say hello to you from Berlin. I'd like to introduce my three guests in this talk. We have Jinjob Cha. She's an internationally acclaimed dancer and choreographer. And amongst many other works, she was the director of choreography for the opening and closing ceremony of the Winter Olympics in 2018 in Korea. And she frequently works with artists from different fields and also with tech experts. That's why she's here in our talk today. Welcome. Um, I welcome Annemie van Ackeren. She is artistic and managing director of one of Germany's most renowned independent theaters for modern performance, for dance, experimental theater. It's the HAU, Hebel am Ufer, and it's based in Berlin. And hello, Gil Alvarez. He's artistic director of the Nemo Biennale for Digital Arts in the region of Paris. And as he pointed out in the preparatory talk to me, he said he's the only guest whose work has not been influenced or hindered by the pandemic so far, because the next Biennale will take place in this winter and hopefully for a live audience. And it will have the motto Beyond Reality. Now, the pandemic, of course, has given the subject of our talk a real push. And most of the world, most of parts of the world, the theater venues have been locked down for most of the time during the last 12 months. They have been locked down for analog live performances. And so all of a sudden, the homepages of theaters, which formerly served basically as an announcement page or maybe for selling tickets, now all of a sudden they became proper digital stages for genuine online productions, for art production. And new forms of performances have occurred. Theaters developed a variety of artistic endeavors, from monologue plays via Zoom to bigger experimental productions in live streams. Most theaters have enhanced their technical equipment, and they are planning to establish a digital branch that is a permanent virtual space for online performances. We will talk about this development and how the digital fosters or influences the future of performing arts. Now, for the start of our talk, we have decided to show each other a good example that we came across in a recent period in order to elaborate why we find it inspiring or maybe even trend-setting for the development of the digital in the arts. And I should like to start with Jinjob Shao. And one of your works from last year is called The Future Theater. So basically a key word of our talk, the future theater. Let me share the screen and we'll have a 1 minute video that will give us an introduction to your work. It is in Korean and we English speakers get a translation. Okay.
So the future theater prepared by the Gyeonggi Shinami Orchestra allows for communication and interaction with the people who are offline to determine the overall performance content, choose and move around the venue of performance. The fact that the online audience is actively engaged really brings about a huge change. So maybe this performance is not a performance as a definition of future theater, but a possibility of a future theater. It's a newly designed suggestion that perhaps this possibility could really unfold in the future.
Maybe you want to elaborate on this work a bit because it's quite complicated to grasp in a 1 minute video. So you did a live performance which also addressed an audience and remote audience that could use the mobile devices in order to follow your work. How did it work?
네, 우선은 이 메타 퍼포먼스 미래 극장은 작년 11월에
Meta performance, the Future Theater was performed last year at Gyeonggi Shinawi Theater. But would you please play the second video that I prepared? Then I will add up my comments onto that video after seeing it together.
Okay.
네, 이 공연은 이제 메타 퍼포먼스.
This performance is called Meta Performance Future Theater. And everyone was asking, what's the future theater? As you have seen from the artistic director one is video, we're not trying to suggest a type of future theater, but we just wanted to show one of the possibilities of being a future theater. So on a real-time basis, through a special app, online audience and offline audience got access to this performance to be part of the performance. And as you see here, there are two casters who comment on the performance and ask questions to the audience. As you see here, there's question A or B, and online audience can join in a poll through their mobile phones. And based on unanimity, the next scene will be determined on a real-time basis. So this is a kind of impromptu performance. And as you see here, there are people with numbers on the back, and those people are 5 audiences on site, and they wear wearable cameras, and they just shoot whatever they want to shoot. And the online audience will see the scenes taken by these 5 offline audiences, and the online audience can choose by their own preferences the scenes that they want to watch. And as you see on your left side, P1, 2, 3, 4, 5 means different angles of 5 cameras. And there are 4 different performances in 4 different spaces, and the performance lasted 24 hours, and 12 different performances were on the stage, 1 hour performance and 1 hour break, and like that we've had 12 different performances for 24-hour time frame. And on a real-time basis, audiences ask a question, and the questions are answered, and depending on the answer or scenes chosen by the online audience, the next following scene was determined right away. And stage and outdoor spaces, lobby, and diverse spaces were taken as shoots so that the audience can navigate the different places and spaces during the performance. And a lot of different technologies were applied to this performance, as you see. And deep learning technology, well, deep learned AI sound of traditional Korean instruments were played live, and the AI live performance were edited up. And through the chat app, audiences were talking to each other to provide real-time basis feedback. And different technologies are used here. The scene now you're watching is about, well, I told you that the 12 different performances were staged, and this scene shows different performances played. And the caster has just commented that there are 4,096 possibilities of combining different plays and performances. And I would like to add one more comment to this. From this performance, what matters most is to let audiences participate. participatory right is given to the audience. Conventionally, the audience existed anonymous, but through this trial experiment, the audience participated by themselves with their own wills to determine the following scenes. And the audience is on site, physically present, Well, the audience was to see the scenes given in a given frame, but now a physically present audience is on site. We're freely navigating the whole performance spaces. And that was the biggest difference.
Okay, so in this work, we're talking about empowerment of the audience. The audience is empowered on two levels, so to say. They become directors like the real life in place audience that are kind of the camera eye in this production, and then you have the remote audience on the mobile devices, and they can choose between the scenes by means of poll. So you have basically empowerment on two levels, and people influence the directorial process. Is that true?
Yes, I agree with your comment. In the end, performance no longer exists unilateral, but it is completed through the interaction of both sides, and we give a leeway to the audience. That's what we have to think of in a digital era, because we want to engage the audience more in the realm of arts. And in that sense, digital means an opportunity to us. And I was engaged in this experimental performance as a choreographic director, and it was totally a test and it was totally an experiment to us. So we were not thinking of a perfection level, but we just wanted to see a possibility, and we saw it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much, Jinjab Cha. Very nice example to start with, because what you're addressing now, the end of the linear storytelling and a rather more spatial storytelling is certainly a component of the digital and in arts. I would like to ask Annemie van Acker for her example. Is also a durational performance, like not 24 hours, but at the very world premiere, it was a 12 hours performance long. Should we first show the trailer of this work, Annemie?
I think it's a good idea. It's a bit long, maybe, Christian. Maybe you have to decide. Or if we speak through it or not. It's 3 minutes. But I think it gives a good example how artists dealt with that. Mm-hmm.
Let's have at least 2 minutes of it, and then you can elaborate on what's going on there.
Fine.
And why it is important.
A good time. What is a good time? We thought that we knew what it was. But was it?
Of course, as you see, we can only be here without an audience. But as Gob Squad, we are, I think, very used to working with the actual circumstances that we find ourselves in and always have to adapt to.
Shut your eyes and just listen. This is what an empty theatre sounds like. World, are you there?
Good luck, everyone. We're no longer allowed to touch, to congregate, to dance and to sweat on each other.
Tonight I'm going to fulfill a lot of my fantasies, and maybe I'm going to even break some rule.
Radical empathy.
This is what we all should do, is try someone else's shoes, isn't it?
Remote existence from each other.
And if you want to have a good time, then you can help us now by calling.
Past, present and future.
I mean, look at this. This is like a once very significant historical place. This has become a theatre.
So we're now starting to kind of build a world of getting through a particular situation.
Maybe we stop here, because it is the moment that reoccurs in this play again and again. And every quarter of an hour they have this laugh, or every half an hour they have this laughing minute where they laugh. Annemie van Acker, why have you chosen this work to be inspiring for us in this topic?
I mean, there were other options, but this one was when it's about really a performance collective called Gob Squad dealing with this pandemic situation. I think they were, for us, very exemplary how to deal with a new situation. And this is, of course, how they have been working, always taking into account how society is going, how communities are dealing with what's going around us. And so they decided, we were also able to give them the beautiful theaters, the whole one, where they could work and develop a work that the actors were out in the city. Some of them were still in the UK and looking for a good time. You already mentioned it, that every 15 minutes, I think, even there was a kind of a break. And so there was a whole hour every time that was repeated. And I think what they managed is to create a sense of liveness, of being in the moment, being in the time. To show me a good time is a very good title for that. So it was also, we are in the time. This was nothing on demand. So you were there, or you have missed it. You could not look back at it. So as is the case with many discussions, which is also another thing which I think is very great. But this one is was dealing with the aliveness and the uniqueness of a theatre evening while we being at home still. And for me, I mean, that's also what we heard from audiences, that it really gave that sense of connectedness somehow and being part of something. I think, so this is why I chose it. It was also maybe the first real show that managed somehow to deal with this. There was another, do I still have 1 minute, Christian? Because the other examples I will not show, but we were working on a festival called Spy on Me, the second edition, and the opening night was on the 19th of March. So we all know that just 10 days before, or even less, we had to close down the theaters. And why I mentioned this is that the Spy on Me thinking is really looking for artists and artistic maneuvers, as we called it, to deal with our digital present. So it's already part of our attention to think about what the digitality is doing to our desires, our attention, our political being. And there are many, I mean, we try to transform and manage for half of it to transform some of the works into the digital realm. And this worked for the works who were thinking already within this digital world and using tools and platforms for this. So this is still for me also one other strand, if I may call it like this, that is necessary to explore further. And I'm also passionate about it, together with my team, to look into this. And we as HOW have a quite broad concept of what theater is. So even before, we don't confine ourselves to call theater what is on a stage. A theater can also be a walk in the city, or it can be basically anything. So theater of the future can be also something that is happening just online, and that artists are really using, maybe with a performative mindset, the tools that are there, and subvert them and take them for them and do something with that.
If we're talking about digital theater, we're talking about new online communities, new audiences. Coming back to this Gob Squad example, you had a premiere that was staged or streamed in Berlin as well as in San Diego. Mm-hmm. Did these two audiences come together, or was there a kind of response from both sides?
This was beginning of June, and I think it could have been more. I think we were so much focused on how to do this. I mean, you see the performers, but on stage there was a battery of technicians working their asses off, pardon my language, to make it all happen. And so we have learned a lot how to exactly what you are mentioning, Christian, to how to include audiences more in an interactive way. So we did not have a chat for that time, because it was just it's part of the learning process. And but there were people calling. So as you may be seen in the film, you could call one of the performers. In every hour there was a new telephone number and somebody who needed help, let's say. And so there were people calling also from the United States. In that respect, yes. But this would be the next step, basically, to also open a chat, and that it requires also really a good way in managing it, moderating it. I mean, you're a person who has had yourself a lot of experiences with that. It takes some brain also to really put it up, and the technical elements.
Some theaters are at the moment establishing places like the digital foyer, where people can, join in, get together, maybe even have breakout sessions, meet and greet, and then start watching the performance at one moment in time. And as you said, the interactive part was very important because you could influence the way the artwork worked, and you could influence the performance that came up every hour, and bring up titles and bring up ideas of what the performers should perform. That was the part between the distance or remote audience and the artwork itself. And now to bring in Jill Alvarez, you have chosen an example of an Irish-British group called Dead Center, and their work is called To Be a Machine version 1.0. You will present it at Biennale, Nemo Biennale in wintertime.
Version 1.0 is our socially distanced COVID iteration of To Be a Machine, an adaptation of the book by Mark O'Connell, which is an investigation into transhumanism. Transhumanists are all united through thinking that the body is an obstacle that we need to overcome in order to achieve our true natures, our true selves. And of course, in the context of COVID-19, it's our bodies which are the problem. Our bodies are biohazards. And we started to think, how would the problems of social distancing complement the story of transhumanism, and how we would tell that story?
The show is an investigation into our relationship with technology, our relationship with our bodies, especially in the context of how disconnected we've had to be through the lockdown, and how maybe all we want to do is to just be together.
One of the wonderful things about doing something you've never done before is that there's lots to discover. It's basically, the whole process is a series of unknowns. And in this case, putting together what I'm describing as a live short film means we don't know exactly what effect that will have on an audience. So what we have imagined for this iteration is we have an audience who, rather than being physically present in a theatre, are uploading themselves into the space, and we will give them a digital presence rather than an embodied one. And so we're very excited to see that when we put this together in the room and stream it out to people's laptops at home, will that connection that you get in the live theatre experience translate or not? So there's lots to discover.
There will be some audience interaction, and again, that's kind of what we're trying to look into. It's like what is lost when there aren't any bodies in the room, and maybe my job as the performer is to try and make the audience feel like they are there, and to try and give a sense of vitality and liveness to the whole thing.
In particular, we're very, very happy that the Science Gallery have partnered with us and giving us support and mentorship and guidance. It's kind of an ideal partnership to tell this story about transhumanism and technology.
I'd like the audience to come away feeling like they weren't just staring at a screen for 45 minutes. Something that makes them feel alive, something that makes them feel rejuvenated in some way, excited, hopeful, more human.
What is interesting is that it was a show that was designed before the pandemic, so it's not a pandemic show. It's not a way of, like you said, bridging the time until normal physical events. It's actually a live performing show that happens to be only online. So as they say in the video, it's a sort of live show film. There's quite a nice way of using audience participation. I personally don't like audience participation because the spectators pre-record videos when they buy their tickets, videos of their face and their expressions, and they are activated by the technicians during the show. They become a sort of normal picker because these short videos are put on iPads in the theater room, and they are like a real public in the room where the actor plays. But you see also online the room, and you see these iPads. So it's a sort of double virtuality actually, but it's not a real participation. About the content, because I really think that the quality of this project is that the form and the subject are really linked and intertwined. And as they say, well, first it's a story. The subject is transhumanism, and you know that transhumanism consider us as animals that should be improved. So why not become technology? Let's jump in the machine. Let's be technological animals actually, and this is what the show does, but only during the duration of the show. So the actor is mixed with many characters, including the author of the text, and there's 3 cameras. There's a lot of technology, and I mean the actor is on stage. Spectators are both in front of their laptops, but also in the room on iPads, and the technicians, they may be everywhere in the world. Actually, I mean, you can have your show in your theater, but it's done actually in Dublin, and it doesn't really matter. And so yes, it's a sort of magic actually. Advanced technology magic, of course. There's plenty of green screens, a lot of technology I don't even understand. But yeah, so everything gathers in this thing where the being and the technological being are it's like parallel universe that happen to work for like 1 hour, and I think it's really awesome, and I think it's a sort of extra touch of added soul, and it did happen with other shows, of course, due to the pandemic. But this one was before, and for me, it's really a new way to do theater. It has nothing to do actually with the pandemic.
Form and content of this work come together quite well, because transhumanism is about conservation. About conservation of the mind and conservation of maybe the body, and as a method, the work itself conserves the image of the spectator, and the spectator is implied in the work, but only on the level of image. They can recognize themselves in the theater space.
You know, it's not like many audience participant shows. There's one example I want to talk about because I hate it. It was quite famous French performance where they had the idea of it's a WhatsApp performance, right? So the people can comment live, and you have all the comments that goes just on the side of the actors, and I don't know, I've never seen such a continuous flow of stupidity and I don't know, of course, self-expression, but on the worst sense of self-expression, emojis and even sexual offensive comments on the actress. That was a disaster. And I don't know, I think that all the bad tendencies of the humankind can be liberated and maybe even tolerated in this kind of audience participation, because it is art, you know, and for me, no way.
Well, it certainly depends to have a moderation and a chat. So you need to design a chat in order to get good results, I think.
Yeah,
the question, Jill, maybe Annemie can answer this. In theater, we have spoken for a long time. We've spoken about feedback process, about the audience having an influence on the live event, just by clapping, laughing, doing these little things in response to the artwork. That was theater. Because it was live, it had the opportunity for the audience to give a feedback on what they're saying. In our German debate about digital theater, we spoke a lot about it should be live, and it should also have a level on interaction, just to give the audience a feeling that it's happening right now. Annemie, do you think that's important for the digital performing arts in order maybe to make it different from, let's say, film?
But I think the reactions of the audience do influence also what the performers are doing. So it's not only, I think, that's why I love theater and that's why I'm working in the theater, is that an old professor of mine told me this: the show actually only starts to live in my head when I'm there, so and vice versa, also for the performers. I think why performers are suffering so much at the moment in the classical context is that there's no audience. And so an actor called me recently and said, I'm rehearsing for the fridge. So we rehearse and have to put it in the fridge and to get it out. And so this is, of course, I think it's going, it's a two-way direction. And I think participation, it's such a vast concept, right? As also I would like to say to Gilles, because the worst things come out in the digital world, but also in the analog world. I would not maybe separate that so strongly as you do. I think we are dealing with people who are born in this. Yeah. So I think for me, if we are thinking of a future audience, we have to understand how their mindset is and how they see the world around them, namely with those things here. This is my cell phone, which with the background disappears, is it's the most precious thing they have. It's very close to their heart. So if we don't understand what that means and how they play with it, we cannot react as artists, let's say, or artist producers to what that is. It's a bit a detour to your question, Christian. I realize this, but it's more that I think that this kind of reaction of it's the most stupid things I've seen. I really understand what you say, but it doesn't bring us forward. We will have to explore a bit what other ways are possible. And I think that we are engaging in a piece that will run through an app, which will be a fictitious story of a person who will dive into like a kind of a right-wing environment, a woman. No? So this will be an app that you have to feed in order for the story to go on. I don't know yet how far the story, they have scripts, of course. They are artists, so they want to be sure a little bit of what they want to do, but there will be an interaction. And I think this feeling of also thinking along with what is happening, I think is important for a younger generation. Absolutely. This is okay as an answer for now, or reflection?
Especially because the digital space is very much about taking part, right? The digital space is like you have Instagram Live, you have let's plays. You have all this kind of live performance in the internet, and people on the internet are more prosumers than consumers. So maybe this is why we speak so much about, okay, how do we get the audience to take part, and how do we get the audience to have a kind of active role in the artwork?
If I may, with Gob Squad, I did not miss a second that I could not chat. So I think there's also a way of, or with other pieces where you can chat, you can always choose to ignore that. You don't have to. I think this is probably also another way still, that there are more options. We had this Mozilla Hub environment for ein Werkstatt. How do you say this, Christian? A workshop encounter of artists who are working in the digital realm. And even some of my younger colleagues said, I didn't go in anymore as an avatar. I just watched the conversations on YouTube, and that was, or on Vimeo better. So that is also fine. I think these more thinking and options will probably guide us, and that's the work we have to do.
Okay. Jill, do you want to respond to that?
No, I mean, my example was just that in France, this show was like very important because the teachers and the theaters were so glad to say that all the pupils, all the students, I mean, were watching, and that they were actually forced to watch. And so they were launching all the bad comments. So this is also an example of demagogy, actually. And so I don't say that audience participation is, but it needs to be moderated, as you said. And I wanted to tell about this example because for me it was a catastrophe and a demagogical catastrophe due both to the theaters and the education. That's it.
Jean-Job Cha, you presented a work that is really hybrid, that has partly an analog spatial setting, for people live at the place, and then you have parts of the artwork was addressed to this remote audience on their mobile devices, sitting wherever, maybe even international. A lot of people say the future of performing arts will go in the direction of virtual reality. You perform do your choreography maybe for an exclusively virtual space. Do you think that is an option you will find interesting as an artist? Is that a direction you want to go? Or do you think, no, the embodiment and the analog part will be very relevant, and why?
우선 저는 사실 제가 이제 작업에서
I try to use technology or different media to my art piece performance, and I consider it as an expansion of body because I use my body for my performance. And in that line, I choose different media or technology. So high technologies like VR or different medias are not the final goal for me, but what I try to do is to let the audience feel better about the movement of my body or artist's body. That's what we do as performers. And what matters most is the liveliness and spontaneity. And that should be coexisted. And that coexistence doesn't exist only in a cyberspace or a physical space. Cyber and physical spaces can be connected to one another as coexistence, like you saw from Future Theater. And if you do performances for 24 hours, then there should be an audience in one side of the planet and other audiences from the other side of planet who should be watching our performance. And they can stay at their own private spaces connected through the internet. So cyberspace can, in that sense, focus more on individuals. In that sense, using technology can play a critical role in performance. And what we do physically on stage should be poised in that sense with virtual reality.
As soon as you as an artist produce digital images, you also open up your work to all the modes of a digital mashup, reassembling of images, making memes, maybe, you know, having all this kind of digital artistic practice that people like so much about, you know, having an author, you know, with his image and as a kind of comment. How do you think about this? Is there more an opportunity for the performing arts, you know, to create these images and to give just to let go and to let people do whatever they want with your image? Or do you think, no, that could be problematic as well? And maybe Jean Job could answer first, and then I would like Annemie also to address this point, because in theater we've spoken for a long time, we've spoken about the real presence, the presence of the body, the embodiment, and so on, and the, you know, one moment in time thing. But now we get to an era where the images become detached from the body, and of course, as soon as you detach them, the image, you know, has a life on its own. How do you look at this? Do you find it okay if people mash up your images from your artwork?
글쎄 제가 정확하게 지금 질문 이해했는지 모르겠지만
So if I understood the question correctly, so, you know, regarding the imitation and copying and maybe plagiarism. So with the digitalization and the online developments, you know, information is the power, and you have to be really quick to respond. And networking has become increasingly important. So who has the most information, who has the largest network, and who is there to quickly adapt and respond? I think that is one important trait that we need to have. And a lot of people are accessing SNS to promote themselves. And as for myself, I am exposed to a lot of information every day, and I'm also tempted by a lot of visual images online. But personally speaking, sometimes there are also sometimes unintentionally and subconsciously, we tend to imitate other people's images, but not intentionally, but unconsciously. So I think that, of course, creativity is very much linked to imagination, but imagination comes from experience and memory. So my memory comes from my perception or my cognition, and my cognition is very much inspired by my indirect and direct experience. So I believe that everything that I perceive, recognize, and remember actually surface themselves, you know, without me knowing. So unconsciously, and sometimes most of the time they influence my artworks. So there are lots of experiences that are stored within me, that are accumulated in myself. But we really have to think about if this is fully my own experience. Maybe I am indirectly also inspired and also impacted by others to have that kind of experience within me. So that is why I constantly ask myself the questions, and to censor myself as well. And I constantly ask the questions regarding my identity. So I try to look back on my past artworks and try to renew my future artworks, and really have to constantly think about whether we're going towards the right direction. I mean, we cannot we cannot expand ourselves in an unlimited way. I think that we really have to keep that focus in the middle and try to internalize the experiences that we have. So I think regarding the answer that I'm giving to you regarding the question that you asked, it's something that I constantly think about. So I'd like to know what others have to say.
I say we're constantly under influence, and also under influence of images that that circulate. Yeah, that's very true. But Anmi, are your artists at your How theater, are they so easygoing about the copies, about the possibility of copies? And
I think it just I think, Jin, this is just a very reflected answer of the world we are living in. So I'm grateful for your answer. It's also more philosophical than it is economical, and I think your question is also referring to an economical circumstance that around authorship, author rights, copyrights. I think it's in English. So. I think we are already lost this moment that no photography in a theater, right? I mean, since years, I would say it's obsolete. I don't know if this is an English word, but out of time to hinder people to take a picture with their cell phones and then put it on their whatever Instagram social media channel they have. And actually, it could be a good marketing for this artwork, So this is one part. I think that it's about really thinking through the economical basis for artists, how if they live from their copyrights or from selling shows and so forth and so on. It's also a learning process, Christian, because we know everything about copyrights in the performing arts, but so how does it go? If we have a show, something that would remain on demand, for instance, it has to be already in the contract, and we can learn a lot, I think, from Gilles also, who is probably a bit more in the visual arts or in how artists are dealing with their visual rights, let's say. We are in a learning process, to be honest with you, and I think that especially artists coming from the performing arts, at the moment, I think they would be happy, let's say, or grateful if images and the work is being distributed as why not in mashups or in memes or something. I think it would also be great to integrate more, let's say, our theatrical and dance, because we also do dance, Jin. I mean, when I say theater, for me, it's the whole performing arts, to have this more of a presence on these platforms, for instance. I think this could work, but I don't have the answer for the monetary effects of this.
Gilles, do you think this is more a debate about for the theater branch and not so much about your?
I could answer by an example that is it's not really cinema and it's not really theater. This is something we do actually at the 104 in Paris, and it can travel. It's a holographic cabaret. So maybe it's a French company called 1420. They have filmed many short performances of many artists in dance, theater, music, and a lot of post-production work, of course, and also double screens and stuff. It's holography, but people come and come in a theater or in a circus or whatever, and they watch the image of a show. Actually, they watch. Of course, they don't smell the sweat of the dancer, but I think the dancer and the theater authors and actors are very glad to be in this kind of holographic stuff, because this is not also a question of ubiquity. It's more a way, maybe it's a light way, maybe it's like beer without alcohol, this holographic cabaret. But of course it can travel easily, but the problem, the quality of it links performing art with contemporary art in a way of the concept of multiples. And maybe I would end with this, because it's important in photography. You don't mind to have people buy multiples. It's not a problem. And this show presents multiples, and it can travel. It's not a question of pandemic, really. Once again, it's just another way of virtualization of performing art, but not online, right? In the room. So
can I ask a question, Gilles? Does the audience, because I forgot to mention one element maybe, does the audience Do they pay an entrance fee?
For
Is
the
there
show?
a ticketing? Yes.
Yeah, ticketing. The people come, they watch. I don't know how to really to describe it. Because, you know, it's a holographic cabaret. So people come to see a show that has been done before, you know, but it works perfectly, and especially because technically it's amazing. It's really, after 5 minutes you forget that it's holographic. You think the people are on stage. So
I want to see that.
Well,
sounds great.
And so
no, but my point is actually, because of course there's the artist, but on the other hand, it's also about experimenting. And Christian knows is also, like in Germany, when the pandemic started, and I'm also grateful to you, Gilles, that you always refer to things that were already in the making before. You know, there's so many artists working with the digitality, is that there were a lot of streams that were for free. Also as a gesture, positively said, and negatively, out of fear that people are not willing to pay. And I think we are at a moment where we are experimenting also with, like for Gobscott, obviously you have to pay. It's a unique event, so that's not a problem. But also for filmic works that choreographers have been making because they were not able to perform for an audience, we are asking now €5. And it's very interesting to monitor how many people are doing this. And we think it's not only about the money, it's about the effort you have to make to go through the process to make a ticket. There's a sea, an ocean out there of free stuff. But then if you have paid, you really watch the 30, 40, 60, 90 minutes. And so I think we are also still a little bit in an experimenting phase in how this works.
Did it reduce the number of spectators, or did it
well, the thing is, Christian, that we still are also trying in our analytics, let's say, to see. So people sometimes say we have thousands of clicks, but then you have to analyze, was this like 2 seconds and out, or did somebody stay until the end? And I think with the films we had the Betalschranke, so that you have to pay a ticket, people then, I think we could have had more without the paying, but that people really watched the work.
It was more quality watching rather than just quantity.
Yes, because there's a very conscious decision. Okay, I'm going to buy the ticket and I'm going to watch it whenever I like. Because I think also this kind of idea of the on-demand and remote culture is here to stay. So we really have to keep on trying and developing ideas to work with this.
Okay. Well, we have 1 hour of talking now. We had a bit of technical problems in the beginning, so it is okay for us to, have a few minutes more. But still, what I found very interesting about our discussion is it was very optimistic, very, very much speaking about the opportunities of the digital to reach new audiences, to reach also new ways of composing an artwork, not only the linear story or the dance story from A to Z, but giving way to the audience to reassemble the work, to have a rather more a spatial approach to the artwork, combining different scenes, maybe A, B, C, and now A, C, B, this kind of stuff, which is a very new mode of thinking in the digital age, definitely. And we spoke about the opportunities that performing arts gain from this. And we didn't speak about, in Germany, the debate is also a bit pessimistic when theaters think, okay, as soon as we develop our digital branch, and maybe then the politicians will say, okay, they don't need that much money for the real thing. They don't need that much money for these huge, theater spaces and, all the people who are involved in the process of creating a theater evening. So you tend to have a little more pessimistic discussions sometimes. This one was very optimistic. And I thank you very much for giving us this insight into your work and into the inspiring examples you came up with during the last few months in the pandemic. And stay calm, stay well, and all the best for you in the rest of this year, and then have a good theater time after the pandemic.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. It was really nice meeting you, Gilles and Jin. It was great. And there's enough talk about the negativity, Christian. So it's great that you focused also and asked us for the positive side. Wow. Super.
Otherwise, the bad guy. The debate. Bye-bye.
네, 감사합니다.
감사합니다. Bye. Thank you. Dankeschön.